Hi, it's Edwin Rutsch from the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy, and I'm here today with Ed Kirwan to talk about Empathy Week, a conference that you're putting on. It starts from February 24th to February 28th. And you want to talk about that, or first introduce yourself a bit more? Anything you'd like to say about
Yeah,
yourself?
great. Thanks, Edwin. My name's Ed. I'm previously a teacher, secondary school science teacher, and taught for a few years in London. And now I'm the founder of Empathy Week and a filmmaker. And Empathy Week is all about trying to develop empathy in young people across the world and give them an opportunity to develop that through empathy action projects, but also using the power of film to engage and inspire them in other people's lives and also world issues that are taking place.
What got you started to get interested in empathy and create this event?
Yeah, good question. The whole thing around Empathy Week came through various experiences, but I think my first real kind of dose of using or understanding the idea of empathy was in teaching. I taught in a North London school, which had a deprived community, students who came from all ranges of backgrounds, but ultimately figured that the best way to, work with a classroom of students that are all from different backgrounds was to understand them. And I didn't use the word empathy at the time, but I definitely deployed it in the sense that I wanted to know, what you've had for breakfast even, or, what your interests are, what you don't like, what sports or hobbies you're into. And by understanding the students that I taught, I was able to build a relationship with them, a mutual relationship, which meant that when it did come down to me asking for homework, they knew it was out of my best interest for their best interests. Sorry. And they knew that I was doing it from a place of, love and wanting them to do well. And that came from that mutual understanding of, deploying empathy. And I think in particular, when it came to students who were misbehaving, rather than shouting at them, I would always say to them, there's always a reason for behavior, but there's never an excuse. So I'm not excusing your behavior. I'm not excusing the fact that you've done that to someone else, but what's up? What's going on at home? Can you tell me why might you have behaved like this? And there was always a reason. What I learned as a teacher, there was always a reason for behavior, always. And actually it's our job as teachers, as educators, and people around the world to not maybe retaliate or not really act straight away on something that someone's done to us, but actually try and understand them. And that's really hard. It's not an easy thing to do at all, especially teaching under pressures. But that's what got me interested in empathy as a concept. And I started to do assemblies at school around homelessness in particular. And then I left teaching and spent a year or 2 years working around homelessness and using a camera, which I'd never done before, documenting people's experiences. And I ended up in Mexico in 2018 at the Homeless World Cup, which is a tournament, a charity and a tournament that brings together 50 countries from all over the world. And they have teams of people who have experienced social exclusion or homelessness in the past 12 months. And they play football together. And it's the craziest event or tournament you'll ever see in your life. So I was in the heart of Mexico City. They'd set up four aside football pitches, and you've got teams that are wearing their nation's jerseys, as you say in America, or uniforms or kits, and they're playing against each other. And all of a sudden you see these people. I mean, that's a real tournament of empathy. You see these people that are walking through the city, stumble across a tournament, and they have no idea that these people, apart from the fact that there's Homeless World Cup written up, that have experienced homelessness. They just see someone who's playing football. They just see someone representing their country. And that's the power of that tournament. And through that tournament, I met an organization called Slum Soccer, which brought the Indian team across to the World Cup each year. And they asked me to go over to India to help them develop a leadership course, because whilst I was teaching, I'd also done a master's in leadership and education and had been doing various leadership and facilitation roles to pay my bills whilst I was doing various, little documentaries and things. And I went over to India, and that was the moment when I realized that, hang on, my filmmaking's got to a good level. I'm a teacher and I'm an educator. Can I put these two things together to help young people understand a completely different perspective? And that's when I filmed a few stories from Slum Soccer and a few people there, and decided to put a program together called Empathy Week.
How did you kind of get familiar with the term empathy? It's like you said to begin with, it wasn't like a term. You were just listening. You're a good listener with students. You tried to understand them. You didn't really have the term, sounds like, empathy at that point. At some point, you kind of grabbed a hold of the term empathy. I was just wondering how that happened.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, actually. I probably just coming from speaking to a lot of people on the street, from just being in that field of trying to understand people. I think you then come across the word and the term empathy. I think it has been in use more and more recently, but I also think a lot of people misuse the term empathy for directly meaning kindness or directly meaning compassion. And I'm still learning more and more about empathy. As you'll know, I'm sure there's so many different definitions, and different areas of science talk about it in different ways. But for me, it was something that allowed me to encompass that idea of, at a very simple level, understanding someone else, whether that's their thoughts, feelings, emotions. I know you can get into all the different types of empathy, but it was a way to encompass that and use it to bring other people on board. And I think empathy is something that we all always associate with trying to do good on someone else. Not that it necessarily means that, but trying to leverage that word in a way that, you don't have to. I think this is the thing about, if I relate it to cancel culture as well at the moment, empathy is not about agreeing with someone, it's about understanding someone. And I genuinely believe that if we could get the world to a place where we sought understanding before acting, we would be in a much better society, world round. Doesn't mean you have to agree with someone to empathize with them at all, from my understanding of it. And that's really, I was like, wow, if we can get every child in the world to have access to this, if we can get every child in the world to be inspired by film and think about their own context, but also in the light of someone else's context, and understand and be grateful for what they have, but also understand what someone else has is greater than what they have sometimes as well. That's a really powerful experience for a lot of young people to do. And it's something that we all live in bubbles. Whether we like to think it or not, we all have our own social bubbles. We all have our own, on our phones as well, we have our own social media bubbles where we think we're seeing the world, but actually we follow the people that we like, or we follow the people that we admire or get along with, and we're still having a blinkered view of the world. And so it's something we all need to actively move towards, is this idea of empathy. And unfortunately, it takes time and a lot of effort to empathize with other people, and especially if they're people that you don't naturally see yourself in as well.
Yeah, so you were inspired to create a 1-week conference to kind of spread this, to bring people, students, maybe teachers. I'm not, if you want to maybe, what's the vision of this?
So it's more, I suppose it's more of a program. Eventually, the idea would be maybe to turn it into a conference. But from my teaching background, I knew that if you said, here's a great empathy resource, go and use it, teachers wouldn't do it, because they'd just push it back and push it back and push it back. So I thought, right, we'll create a week where there's a focus, and that schools around the world can take part at the same time. And during that week, there's 5 films across the 5 days, and schools have an opportunity to focus on a film a day. And what they do is then they have resources, so they have a lesson attached to that. Now, I also know that schools and teachers are pushed for time, and that they don't necessarily have a chance to do something new, even if it's amazing and they love the idea of it. So we created these films to be 10 minutes. They're shorter for the younger years. So if you're 5 to 7 years old, you'll watch a 3 to 4 minute version. If you're 8 to 10, you'll watch a 7-minute version. And if you're 11 plus, you'll watch like a 10-minute version. And we realized that every school had 10, 15 minutes in the day to put a focus. And so we have the film, and we have what we call like an assembly version, which they can they can watch as a snapshot, but then there is the option for teachers to have a half an hour or a 60-minute lesson attached. So we're giving the teachers a choice, but yet they still get that film and they still get that focus. And we've also then differentiated the resources and activities for 5 different age groups, so from 5 to 18. And the idea is that schools have flexibility to use it how they want. And yes, we say it's a week, but if you're a school that want to use day 1 over week 1, day 2 over week 2, you can do that too, because that's what we've realized. Actually, to have impact, you have to make it as easy as possible for people to use. Structured, if you want it to be as structured as possible, but then also the flexibility to use that. And that's how we're going to then build this movement and momentum. But most importantly, I suppose at the end of the week, actually beyond the week, there's a 6-week empathy action project where young people can choose a project area and they can work on them by themselves or in teams of up to 4 to actually tackle an issue that they see in their community or they see in the world, whether that's climate change, whether that's Black Lives Matter, whether that's, I don't know, it could be absolutely anything, social mobility, whether it's education, mental health, anything they want. And we give them a structured workbook to tackle that through a social kind of entrepreneurial mechanism called the double diamond, which is where you split problem into 4 areas. So discover the problem area is the first D, define the actual problem. So rather than just saying, right, I've discovered my area is climate change, actually then define, okay, well, what within climate change, what is it that you actually can do? So that might be that my school canteen doesn't have any reusable plastic. So all the plastic drinks bottles get thrown out and we don't have recycling. Like, define actually what the problem is that you want to tackle and that you're, really going to pinpoint. And then the second part of the diamond structure is develop solutions. So actually be creative, get thinking. Do I want to do a fundraiser? Do I want to support a charity that's already doing something? Do I want to launch a petition? Do I want to launch a social movement? Do I just want to educate people? Do I want to do TikTok videos? Do I want to do Snapchat videos? Do I want to set up a forum in school? It can be absolutely anything. And that's really important, to give students the agency and empower them to believe they can take on anything they want to do. And then the 4th stage is, right, deliver that. Go out and actually, put your money where your mouth is, as we'd say, and go and actually do something. And the reality is that 99.9% of kids' projects will fail, but that's fine, because there's next year and there's the year after. And really, Empathy Week is not about, right, great, here's a week each year, your students are going to become empathic within 1 week. It's not going to happen. It's a process. But what we're hoping is that if you're a child that's 5 years old this year, by the time you're 18, you'll have carried out, and your school does Empathy Week every year, you'll have carried out 13 different Empathy Weeks, which means you'll have watched 65 different people's lives over the course of your education. From all, we film in a different country each year. So first year was India. This year, because of lockdown, I'm in London. I filmed people in London around me. This year for 2022, I'm going to hopefully fly somewhere and film some other amazing people's lives. But imagine, like, I was never exposed to 65 different people's cultures and lives that I would have never otherwise met. And think about what we can do with that exposure to people's lives. And right now we have there's 17 or 18 international teacher ambassadors that we work with across 5 continents. So we have an ambassador in the US, we have an ambassador in Ecuador, Mexico, Brazil, Nigeria, Uganda, Lebanon, in the Middle East, Nepal, India, and the UK. And together we're spreading it across those regions as well. And we're in over 40 countries worldwide last year, hopefully the same this year, and a couple of 100,000 students. So the impact is now starting to come, and I think hopefully this will lead to 20 years down the line, maybe 30, having leaders in business that understand the importance of empathy, if anything.
So this is going to be, you have done this before? This is, you have.
So this is the second Empathy Week.
Oh, okay.
Coming up.
I wasn't aware of that. So this is the second one. So the idea is then, as I'm understanding it, that you have some videos of people's stories. Students watch those, and you're creating sort of a series of sort of like lesson plans, like tools that can be used or sort of off the shelf that kind of make it easy for teachers or schools to sort of implement. They watch this, they discuss it, and then you've got some tools for sort of initiating projects by the
Yeah.
students. And it sounds like you're using the basic human-centered design thinking sort of framework.
Yeah.
So as a sort of a way of engaging the students. And then it's going to be reproducible. You could be doing this every year, just kind of keep building
Yeah.
sort of a movement and sort of a tool set and kind of keep reproducing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, it was really important that, I mean, I suppose it's probably not the most the smartest decision in business sense, but maybe it is, I don't know. But we make sure it's free for every state and government school across the world. So we do charge private schools and fee paying schools, but again, it works out at something like $1, $2 per child if a private school does it. So we make it really reasonably priced as well. But that's the important thing, is that every student, every young person in the world should get this opportunity. We talk about, in the media and across the world, how young people are disengaged and they're always on their phones and they're always doing this. Yet as soon as we see young people standing up and speaking for what they believe in and wanting to make change, they're ridiculed. And it's outrageous, it's ridiculous. And so Empathy Week is trying to be this platform to do it in an environment where they can learn, they can follow a structure. Teachers and parents can be involved as well with supporting their child to do this. And ultimately, we have to give the opportunity for young people to take risks and put themselves out there and fight for what they believe in and empower and give them agency. Because at the moment, we're drilling down, and from an education perspective, we're drilling down curriculums, no matter what country you're in, which are so rigid, bloated, and there's too much information, and it's not useful for young people to go out into this world and actually change it in a beneficial way. So every child deserves this opportunity, and every child should get this opportunity. And we're talking about children that live in slum areas in India. Even eventually, I've got lots of plans to make this, I suppose, in a mobile version or more accessible over smartphone, because that's how we're going to reach more people across African nations, across third world countries as well, countries that people don't have laptops or there aren't projectors in classrooms. So we really do have a global vision for Empathy Week, and we hope that it raises the conversation around the topic as well, because that's important as well. We want other people to be highlighted in the work that other people are doing around this space, because we truly believe that empathy is not the answer, but is one of the most important skills and tools that a human can possess.
Well, there is a big movement towards human-centered design in the schools, or, I would say it's like project, learning 2.0. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. The real center for human-centered design is the company IDEO and the design school at Stanford. And they do a lot with, trying to spread this in the schools. They use the model of empathy, define, ideate, prototype, and test in an iterative process. So there's different terms that are used for that. So seems like you're on the, the trajectory is out there, and it's something that seems that is growing and building. And so you're going to have a sort of a tool set for engaging students sort of on that path of design, human-centered design, or project-based learning.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's it. But again, it's getting it into the hands of teachers, and also not just getting it into the hands of teachers, but making them understand that it supports what they're already doing and is beneficial to them. Because especially this year, and I don't blame them at all, because I would do exactly the same thing if I was teaching right now. But given, being told there's this great new resource that you can use, first question would be, how much does it cost, especially if I'm in a state school or a government school? And the second question would be, okay, how much time does it take? Because teachers are so stressed and they can't get beyond their daily curriculum and things. So that's why we make it as easy as possible to do it, because there are so many barriers in the way for teachers to do it. And I really think that's how we can change education for the better, and also get empathy into the hands of younger people, is by listening and working with teachers as well.
Well, how about we take a quick tour of your website? I have it here, unless you want to bring it up either.
Yeah, I can share. So hopefully you can see that.
Yeah, I see it. So empathy-week.com is the website.
So we have this, I suppose our vision is to build the empathy generation, which is this generation of students leaving school who are able to deploy empathy. And as a school or a teacher, you can quite simply go and register here, and it will take you to somewhere where you can register. We also have our school brochure, which you can, if you click there, that gives you all the information, a bit more background on what we do. This is a photo I took actually in India, which is probably one of my favorite photos ever taken, just because of the sunlight and how beautiful it was. But these students, young people, lived in the slum area, 10 meters from this to the right of this house, and just their joy at playing football. But that's a very important image for me, I think, with Empathy Week. And you're starting to see also here's Huss, the film subject of the stories this year. This man's Habib, who's an Afghan refugee, who was an Afghan sergeant major actually, and a presidential bodyguard, but had to flee his home with his 2 children and wife in 2015. ISIS actually started sending him letters because they wanted to turn him into a double agent, essentially. And it was getting lots of threats that were, nice letters saying, we don't want to kill you, but actually he knew that his family were about to be abducted. So he's now in West London in the UK, and he's set up a restaurant. So one of the stories focuses on him. A little bit about how it works, but yeah, people can delve into this. And again, here's just the framework essentially of how the week works. Students inspired by films and classroom activities, and then they move on to team up and take on an empathy action project. So that's there if you want to take a deeper delve into that, if you're a teacher. We also have the trailer, and we have a bit more about what we do and how we're trying to build the generation. And we also have an animation about what that looks like. In terms of resources, I'm just going to quickly log in and give a quick look at this year. So once you're registered and once you're verified, you will be given a login, and you can log into our website and see the resources for this year. I've actually logged into an account which is for 5 to 10 years old, but there's also an account for 11 to 18, and there's also an account that gives you all of the age ranges, and you can download all the resources. And it's split into 5 stories. So we've got Shu's story, who is a British Chinese born blogger and food presenter. We've got Huss, who talks about growing up in East London and lacking opportunities, but now he is giving those opportunities back to young people through his mentoring service and business called Kate Mentors. We've got Pete, whose dad took his life in February 2020, so very recently, and we follow his story about how he uses sport to help his mental health. Then we've got Natasha's story, which is really interesting because she uses both her DJ name. She's an international DJ and has been a broadcaster and things in the BBC, and she uses her DJ name Melody almost exclusively now, but actually her real name is Natasha. And we go back and visit her stories and experiences of racism and trauma, and we focus on a bit of the Black Lives Matter movement here in the UK, having started in the US, and then Habib's story, as I mentioned. So this is kind of the structure that young people get, and this is the 4 Ds that I was talking about. But let me just quickly show you if I go onto here, maybe how it works. I believe here's the double diamond. So this idea of taking students from a problem to a definition to a solution, through these stages, but it's the first diamond here about doing the right thing. So discovering the problem, defining the problem, and then about doing things right, prototyping, testing, refining, but through the development and the delivery stage to hopefully a solution. So that's kind of the process that we take
You
young
could
people
just
through.
add, in terms of the model there, the diamond has a sort of a meaning behind it. And in the human-centered design, they use different terms for the discover. In the IDEO model, they use the term empathy. And the idea is that when you empathize, you sort of open yourself up and you take in an ever increasing amount of sort of understanding and, sort of research. And that's why the diamond is sort of open for sort of taking in. And then when you define the problem, you're kind of focusing in and kind of sorting down to one specific problem. And then you find that one problem, then you go into sort of a creativity mode, which is, creativity is open, brainstorming. You're kind of having sort of an open sort of a process until you create a whole field of possible ideas. And then you hone in, sort those down to a specific, prototype that you want to create. So the diamond itself actually represents sort of a way of thinking too.
Yeah, definitely. I think, and also the fact that it's not linear, the fact that you can go back on yourself and keep going back, which may be frustrating, but it's definitely the way that things get done and problems get solved, is that it's never one solution.
Iterative.
And can you see this on the screen, the poster? Yeah, great. So
I see that where your mouse is with the diamond. Yeah.
Oh, the diamond, right? Hang on, let me just quickly share that graphic. Maybe I need to. There we go. You can see the poster now. Yeah.
Okay. The stories.
So yeah, ultimately, it's very much about human stories, and these are the 5 characters as I've talked about this year. And if you're interested, please come and visit the website. We've got our social media as well, at Empathy Week for Instagram and Facebook, and at the Empathy Week for Twitter. And if you know a teacher, most people do, or students or schools, reach out to them and send them this, and hopefully they can join in and take part along with other schools across the world. It'd be amazing to see them take part.
So they come to your website, they register, and they get kind of an account, and they can go in.
And then they get all the resources they need. Yeah.
And what will you actually do during the Empathy Week? So it's February 22nd to 26th. Is there sort of a program that they take part in?
I guess we're in the UK at the moment. In London, we're fully locked down. So we are thinking of doing some virtual events. We've got a great list of ambassadors. I know you know Minter Dial quite well, him being one of them. And so we want to try and do some things with them. We also want to hopefully do some things with the people that are in the films as well. But also we want to support schools. And at the moment we're a small team. And so often we're on standby tweeting about what other schools are up to and communicating with them. But that's I suppose the crucial part. Also, if we want to have impact, this has to be scalable, and we don't actually have to be around for them to run, because the teachers are trained to be those facilitators. And lots of people have asked, oh, why don't you do this and why don't you do that, and do it for school, do it for workplaces, and do it for that. But the reality is that we are giving a tool to teachers that they already know how to deliver. As soon as we start to do things in workplaces, and we will do at some point, I'm sure. I give a few talks here and there, but as soon as we start doing that, it's like, well, who's going to deliver it in that workplace?
Right.
Who's going to deliver it in the correct way, rather than just watching a couple of films? So during the week is yet to be decided on the finalized things. Hopefully get some publicity, hopefully get on a few radio stations or whatever, and boost it a little bit. But yeah, it's the week, but it's also past the week, and our biggest importance is supporting teachers and schools and students to use the resources as best as they can.
Well, if you want to do anything with empathy circles, empathic dialogue, we're glad to support you. That's sort of been the focus. I've been working on empathy, how do we create a culture of empathy for about 14 years. And
Mm.
all those books are empathy. Those are, and I've kind of interviewed most of the authors, and I found that sort of the easiest first step gateway practice for really deepening empathy is that active listening and doing it in small groups. So if you're wanting to do anything around that, where you could have students or teachers take part in empathy circles, we have a whole group of facilitators who are willing to facilitate empathy circles. So
great, yeah. And I know Leadervay very well as well,
yeah.
and I've got to definitely mention Leadervay and Dr. Catherine Train as well, because they've worked with us this year to help kind of Empathic Intervision as an organisation. They've helped to build in the 5 integrative empathy skills that they talk about as well. So that's very exciting, as well as we've had a few leadership coaches, Sarah Milne-Rowe and Mam Tagira, help us with that as well, because not only is it about empathy, but it's also about building leaders and leadership in young people, and by that we mean self-leadership as well. Young people taking accountability for themselves and their own well-being, as well as looking out for other people. So it's exciting, and I think the empathy circles are certainly something that people need to do, because it's so, having done one or two with Leadervay, they're very challenging, I think, and that's what you don't think. You think, oh, listening to someone, okay, easy enough, and that's actually very difficult. So no, it's definitely of interest.
Okay, well, great. Then it's a bit of a tour of the project, and we'll be sending this out and invite others to come and take part, empathy-week.com. And it's an ongoing effort year after year. This is just the second year. You're planning on doing it ongoing, sounds like, for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And that's what it takes. You got to keep iterating, on it, and keep improving. And every iteration, every year, it gets better and more tools, I'm sure. And you can see you've put a lot of work into it, all the design and all the the interviews and the stories and promotion. So it's a huge amount of work. Glad you're out there promoting the value of empathy and fostering dialogue and growth around that, because I really think it's the core thing that the world needs.
Yeah, definitely.
So thanks for your efforts.
Yeah, thank you.